So once again, welcome to the European Literature Days 2020. Due to the corona pandemic, this year it's not possible to meet and interact with international writers here at the Klangraum Krems Minoritenkirche. I'm pleased to welcome to our digital live streaming of all events this day and until Sunday. And I wish you an inspiring and thought-provoking time with our think tank on the topic More Wildness. And now, Veronika, it's your turn again.
Well, good morning and welcome back to those who've already been with us in the conversation with Polly Clark and Dan Richards just before. It's a very great pleasure for me to welcome you to the European Literature Days 2020 in these extraordinary times of the Austrian lockdown. This is the third panel in which Rosie Goldsmith is going to talk to Fabio Andina and to Miek Zwamborn. Before that, I would like to inform you about my role in here and what I'm here for. My name is Veronika Trubel, and I'm going to start and end today's panels from Klangraum Krems Minoritenkirche, here where the European Literature Days usually take place, and I'm going to keep you up to date in case of any technical topics arising. I am also the reporter for any questions arising from the audience, so in case you would like to ask or say something, feel free to do that in the chat or to send us an email. The email address would be literaturtage.2020@gmx.net. And now I'm really delighted to get back to Rosie Goldsmith and her guests. Hello, Rosie, can you hear me?
Very well indeed, and I'm so happy to be back with you, Veronika, and back in Krems. As you know, as I know, this is a place I love very much indeed. I love being with you every single year at this time, and I'm so grateful that you've all gone to so much trouble to make this festival and these incredible, you called us a think tank, to make this think tank work digitally, because it does mean that we can still be together. And I think we should embrace this extraordinary technology, which is bringing us together. Oh, yes. So thank you, Veronika, very much. And I spoke before about being on a magic carpet and flying over the Wachau and Austria, over the Danube, over the vineyards, seeing the villages of Lower Austria, and landing on this beautiful stage with all of you. Now on the stage with me today, and now for our panel, are Fabio Andina. You can see Fabio there. And Fabio is the one with the beard. And then and Miek Zwamborn is also there. And I'm going to ask you both, hi to you both, lovely to see you. You've helped me transport us to some wonderful parts of the world already. Miek, where are you exactly?
I'm on the Isle of Mull, that's in Scotland on the west coast. It's one of the inner Hebrides. And right behind is where I live. I live in a house here. And yeah.
Amazing. So that's the map of your life, your location behind, your wilderness behind you.
Yeah, my playground actually, yeah. So here, that's where I forage the seaweed and where I go for fishing and where I go for walks.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're going to be talking. We're going to be talking to you, Miek Zwamborn, about seaweed and about wilderness, and also about your novels, and and your art as well too, because you're a wonderful artist too, and about how you bring all those things together to address this this topic, which we're talking about today, which is who inhabits the wild? In other words, who lives in the wild? Is it just dreamers, lucky people, elites, people who've got enough money, pedestrians, people just wandering through? We've got a lot to talk about, and so I'm going to bring in Fabio Andina here. Fabio, there's a very frightening looking picture on your wall there. Or is it you? Is it a portrait of you? No.
No, actually, this is Miles Davis. I made it. I also paint, and this is Miles Davis.
Well, we've got artists with us, which I'm really delighted. Artists and writers, and I think it's great. It's great because we'll talk about both those art forms coming together. Now, Fabio, you are in Switzerland. You are not just in Switzerland. You are an incredibly beautiful part of Switzerland. Tell us where you are.
I'm in the Italian part of Switzerland, in my little village called Madonna del Piano. It's a little town close to the border with Italy. From my windows, from my window, I see Italy right now.
Well, thankfully, you're both in places. You're both in quite remote places, but at least the Wi-Fi is working really well. That's a good sign of progress as well. Miek, we'll say you'll be listening and watching in the background, I know, but Fabio and I are going to have a talk about his book and his life and a reading, and then we'll come back to you and we'll have a discussion, all of us together, talking about this topic, who inhabits the wild. Okay, Fabio Andina, now your book, which is in German, it's called Tage de Felice, and you wrote it in your language in Italian, La Pozza del Felice. So tell us about you and how you came to write this book. I want to know the backstory, your life.
Backstory, yes.
Your life before you got to that story.
Yes, so it's in a few words, simply. I was in the USA, in California, studying cinema, and I stayed there for 6 years. Then I came back, and what I can say is that living close to a city, I didn't like it anymore. I wanted to escape from the chaos, from the noise. So I went up in a little house, a vacation house up in the mountain. My parents bought this house back in the 70s, and I decided to stay up there and live up there. And I got in touch really closely with this old man. He was 90 years old. He was he was living close to my house. And this old man used to walk alone every day up in the mountains, in the pine forests. And what inspired me writing this book about this old man was like a legend that used to circle, used to be around in the village. And this legend told about this old man going up in the mountain every morning and night and taking a bath in a pool in this little stream. So no one believed that. So I wanted to follow this man and see if it was true. And that was the idea that sparked the story.
Now that's the story. That's the story.
Yes, I started with that question. Is it true that this man goes up in the mountain every morning and night, winter or summer, rain or wind, to take a bath in a little pool? Is it true? So I started the story like that.
Now, Fabio, that's the story. How did you personally arrive at this story? Because you've described, seeing the old man, wondering what he was doing and so on. And that's the basis of your novel. How did you live before? I mean, you live a very simple life now. You live in the mountains. Yes. You said to me when we were preparing for this that you'd even thought of doing this discussion on the top of a mountain.
Yes.
Is that tell us about your life? Is that where you're happiest?
Well, my life now is looking for the silence, looking to the simplicity and the minimalistic life up in a mountain. I love to stay up in the mountains and live with just the little things that you need to go on during the day. I don't need much things. And this old man, Felice, lived this kind of life, and I try to live the same life he used to live. He is like a teacher to me, and now he's dead. But this book teach me, and is teaching other people that we can live with less.
Now, what does that mean for you, though? Does that mean you don't drink? You don't? I mean, are you self-sufficient? Do you live from your own vegetables? To what extent does that affect your own life?
Well, I tend to say one thing. If I don't use one object I didn't use one object in the last 3 months, I can throw it away. I don't need it. And if I have to buy something, it's just because I really need it. So I really think about objects like something that probably we don't use, and we don't need to buy just because we like them. Most of the people go in a store and buy objects just because they love it, just because they like it, but they don't need it. And this is becoming my philosophy of life, about objects, about food too. I became vegan because I don't want to hurt animals anymore. I don't drink alcohol because I don't want to hurt myself anymore. I don't smoke. I really use the list. I can live with just little objects, little food, little contact with people too. In a sort, I'm becoming more and more like a monk living in a society because I have a son, I have a job, etc. But my philosophy is that I would like to become more and more like a monk, living with myself. And being up in a mountain, it's easier to live this kind of life alone.
Fabio, as a child, how did you live as a child? What brought you to this particular time in your life? What were the influences for you?
Well, I used to live like many other child. The big change came probably after coming back from the US 20 years ago, because I saw, I can say I saw it all. I lived the life. I lived in California. I used to love being in a big city like Los Angeles or New York. And then suddenly I discovered that what I really like is being by myself. Sometimes it's a bit scary to say that, because people tend to stay together, to socialize, to have contacts, to have friends. But I love to be by myself. And so as soon as I can, I escape from the little village from where I'm talking, and I go up in the mountain and I stay 3-4 days by myself without speaking to anyone, just walking and running up in the mountains. This is what I like, and probably it's where I will end up in a few days, in a few years. It's something that I see in the future, and I want to follow this. Felice made this choice to be a lonely, silent man for all his life. And I'm following this kind of philosophy of life.
And how do you put your own personal philosophy and these discoveries about yourself into your writing and your art?
My writing. Yes, for example, in Tage mit Felice, La Pozza del Felice,
which in English is the days with Felice, basically, the days of Felice.
Yes, and I made a mix of my and his philosophy of life, which are very close. They both are really close. I made a mix, and I ended up writing a very slow and silent and poetical novel, because this novel has to portray what I would like to be in the future, or what I would like the life to be: more quiet, more peaceful, more close to the nature also.
So, and how does this fit in with your general writing and creative life? I mean, I know that you're writing all the time, and you've got several novels on the go all the time. You're not just writing one thing.
Yeah.
Tell us about your other writing as well, your creative life.
Yeah, they all go in pretty much in the same direction of minimalistic writing, which is my goal, is to write as much as minimalistic as possible, and always touching this psychology between people. I like to discover and analyze the psychology behind a character. And I'm not really into those thriller stories or noir stories, or I'm more into the psychology of little things or little details, and nature also. Nature is the big part of my writing. Nature is a character in my writings. Nature, meaning nature, I mean the clouds, like watching the clouds passing by, or the water. Water is central in most of my writing, because I believe that water connects all the people in the world, because water has been in this planet for millions of years. And so I believe that, for example, the water I'm drinking right now, probably 1 million of years ago, was in the sea behind Miek's on the wall.
The water I'm drinking connects me with you, which I like.
Yeah, because this water was probably in the sea in Scotland 1 million of years ago, or 10,000 years ago was in a little stream in Patagonia, for example, and someone touched it, someone drank this water, and I'm drinking the same water. So I'm into all these things, philosophical and about nature and about connections in between us as people and the nature as a spiritual world.
Let's just before we hear the reading, let's talk a little bit more about this story, Tage de Felice, La Pozza del Felice. How did you write it? It is a mixture of fact and fiction, as you say. He was a real person, but it's also fiction.
Yes.
Do you have the same minimalist style, which matches your lifestyle, or do you write an awful lot and then cut back an awful lot? How did you approach the actual writing of it?
Yeah, to write La Pozza del Felice, I started by writing the first draft in a few days, using the style of the big generation writers, like Jack Kerouac used to write hours and hours without stopping and without rereading what he was writing, just writing. No? This is my style. For the first draft, I write non-stop for 3, 4, 5 days. And to write La Pozza del Felice, I wrote 150 pages in about 6 days. And that was my first draft. Then I went back 1 year later, to rewrite and to rearrange and to remove and to work on the structure, work on the characters, and to remove everything that wasn't useful for the story. I tried to go into the minimalistic direction, but not too minimalistic. I had to leave a little bit of poetry, and I had to slow it down. And
I think actually in the reading of it too, you slow us all down. You very cleverly work all that into for us as readers, it appeals to that as well. I think you have
and that was a choice, because I had to match the style of the novel with the style and philosophy of life of the main character. This 90 years old man, he was very slow and silent, and he was like a monk walking in the mountains. So I had to slow down my book to give the same pace. So when you read the book, you have a slow pace, and it's the same pace Felice has when he walks in the mountains, in the silence, in a pine forest, looking at the nature, looking at the clouds, looking and taking a bath. I slow it down on purpose.
Fabio Andina, let's have a listen to a reading from your novel. And just to tell people, it's in Italian and in German. It's not yet been translated into English, but let's hope after this discussion today that all the publishers and translators will be rushing to bring it out in English.
I hope so, yes, I hope so.
Okay, thank you. Let's have a listen.
Thank you.
La pozza del Felice. Adesso il sentiero è quasi visibile sotto i miei piedi, un solco profondo, una spanna e largo 3, come quelli che fanno le mucche negli alpeggi. Sento bisbigliare il torrente Gurundina alla mia destra, ma non riesco a vederlo. Facendo 2 calcoli, a questo punto saremo arrivati più o meno a 1500 metri di quota, ma non ne sono sicuro perché non riesco a orientarmi e ho perso la cognizione del tempo. Non porto l'orologio e il NAT l'ho lasciato a casa. Tanto, chi vuoi che mi chiama a quest'ora? Nemmeno il Felice ce l'ha l'orologio. Lui è davanti a me, leggero e a piedi nudi con il freddo che fa. Veste soltanto delle braghette tagliate fuori da un paio di jeans e una camicia di flanella con le maniche corte, sbottonata e con l'ombrello aperto sopra la testa. Lo scorso mese di settembre il Felice ha compiuto 90 anni. Accompagnati dal gorgoglio del Gurundina alla nostra destra, a ogni passo distingo sempre meglio sia le forme che le distanze. Le nuvole si stanno alzando e i profili scuri delle montagne iniziano a stagliarsi contro il cielo, che rischiara appena appena. E infine, dopo un interminabile periodo di silenzio, il Felice dice «Bon!» e si ferma. Mi fermo anch'io, prendo fiato e poi la vedo, una macchia plumblea fra le rocce nere. La pozza. Si spoglia. La sua pelle in contrasto con il buio tutt'attorno pare che risplenda. Non indossa le mutande. Appende le braghette e la camicia a un ramo di un abete lì vicino e senza pensarci su 2 volte si immerge nella pozza, tutto dentro, tutto nudo come un verme, proprio come si sentiva dire in giro. Rimango immobile e trattengo il respiro, timoroso che il più minuscolo movimento possa distogliermi da quel momento. È immerso nell'acqua e lascia fuori giusto il naso, che sbuffa vapore. Mi porto sotto l'abete per ripararmi dalla pioggia, anche se tanto sono già quasi tutto bagnato, e aspetto. Sento le spalle raffreddarsi e inizio a essere scosso dai brividi. Picchio le braccia sul corpo, mi sfrego le mani, batto gli scarponi per terra. Aspetto. Si alza in piedi, esce dalla pozza, si ripara dalla pioggia con l'ombrello e si mette immobile su un sasso a guardare i puntini bianchi dei lampioni giù in valle. Mi dà di spalle. Allora contemplo la scura pozza. Mi dico, ma chi me lo fa fare? Ho freddo, piove, è buio. Però l'ho voluto io. Mi spoglio e mi immergo con una specie di tuffo e urlo anche qualcosa, ma non so che cosa. E mi sbuccio le ginocchia sul fondo sassoso. Vorrei lasciare fuori il naso come lui, ma non ci riesco, è troppo freddo. Con un balzo gli sono da parte, alza un poco l'ombrello e lo sposta verso di me. Rimaniamo così, nudi e in silenzio, a farci asciugare dal vento. Che adesso sta aprendo il cielo, la pioggia sta cessando e da dietro il simano si fa sempre più chiaro. Una volta asciutti ci rivestiamo e ci incamminiamo nel giorno nascente. Lingue di nebbia risalgono veloci dal fondovalle e galleggiando si fanno grattare la pancia dalle punte degli abeti della pineta. Poi ci raggiungono e ci avvolgono per accarezzarci, fredde e umide, finché vedo al massimo 3 o 4 metri attorno a me. E quassù, su una montagna, ci si potrebbe perdere con una nebbia così, o ci si potrebbe sentire ancora più soli. Il Felice strappa la punta tenera da un rametto di mugo sbucato dal nulla e se la mette in bocca e la mastica, ma non la deglutisce. La mastica come una cicca. Poi la nebbia passa oltre, le nubi si diradano e un raggio di sole ci colpisce e la vallata si accende. Dalla piazzola di giro proseguiamo leggeri raccolti lungo la strada sterrata, chiusa fra filari di castagni e frassini spogli. Frassini con vistose cicatrici all'altezza delle bocche dei cervi, le cortecce prese a morsi per la fame degli inverni passati. Camminiamo rimanendo fuori dai solchi paltosi lasciati dai trattori. Le nostre impronte di un'oretta fa sono in parte visibili e in parte riassorbite dal fango. Tutt'attorno prati da pascolo lavati dall'acqua e nell'aria profumo di freschezza.
Thank you, Fabio Andina, very, very much for that. We'll see you later. And I know that you'll be there sitting, listening, watching in the background as I talk now for a few minutes with Miek Zwamborn. And Miek, lovely to see you again. I think we're going to stay very briefly in the mountains and talk about, because you've lived in Switzerland as well, which is where Fabio is. Tell us about your life. Tell us where you've lived, and you were born in the Netherlands, you're Dutch, and you now live on the Isle of Mull. What happened in between?
Well, my life started in quite a swampy area, so in the west of the Netherlands, very not really on the countryside, but surrounded by fields. But I've always been fascinated by rocks, and I collected rocks from a very, very early age. I even had my own museum in my room, and because of the rocks after high school, I decided to study Goldsmith, not because of jewels or because of precious stones, but because of working with roll stones and working with fire. And then I did it for 3 years, and I went afterwards to art school, trying to draw landscapes most of the time, starting to write. And after my graduation, I went for the first time to the Swiss Alps, and that was the start of bigger rocks and walking onto rocks, and the beginning of my novel Wir sehen uns am Ende der Welt too. And the idea for that book was to build to build a kind of frame that was layered as rocks are, and to try to build up storylines and bring in characters, and as if there would be a landfall or a lavina coming over it, just swap away the whole part of the story and start again. So I worked on that book by studying geology and going a lot by myself into the mountains, staying there for a few days with my tent and trying to understand the landscape, and trying to understand myself as well in the landscape. That's, I think,
that's
a connection to Fabio's work as well. Yeah,
I was just thinking that, in fact, is that you and Fabio both inhabit these areas. I mean, you are the inhabitants of the wild. That, if you like, the title of our panel is Who Inhabits the Wild? You two are already inhabiting it, and always have done for a while. How did you get to Mull? Now, the Isle of Mull in Scotland is somewhere that all of us long for, I think, in some way, but it is also a real place. And there are a number of artists and writers living there, I know. So tell us about your life on Mull and how you got there.
So it started with a holiday, and then I met a couple that actually asked me and my partner to look after a house, and at the same time, at the same arrival of Mull, I met this huge seaweed. This was just spread out for me, or it's spread out by the sea on the beach, and it was like I don't know. It was so impressive as a shape, as the shine of the material. It was so vivid, and it looked so alien as well that I don't know. Maybe that was the reason I decided to stay there, and then the whole. Sorry.
Because of the seaweed.
Yeah, and seeing the seaweed attached to the rocks, and there was also, like, first there were the rocks and now the seaweed, but they need each other as well. Seeing how the seaweed reacts on the shoreline, and how it's necessary there, and how they live together, all these different varieties of sea plants. That started to become another focus.
We're going to hear in a few minutes. We'll hear a reading from you from your extraordinary book, which has changed my approach to seaweed completely. Now, people may even laugh at this, but I think most of us just don't connect with seaweed, and that sounds like a very odd thing to say, but it's true. I mean, I was brought up on the coastline of Cornwall. I was born up in Cornwall. I saw seaweed. It was always slimy and revolting. I was very, very happy to get away from seaweed, and I'm sure that's the common perception. But you, with your love, your passion, your interest, your very detailed research into seaweed, have actually completely transformed my view. And not only that, the beautiful illustrations in this book. I mean, art and your poetry together have really brought this to, I think, close to my heart, I think, and I really want everybody now to read about seaweed. But this is part of a bigger creative project for you on Mull. You're involved in all kinds of different creative activities. Tell us a little bit about all of that feeds into this wonderful creation, this seaweed anthology.
So starting to understand where we arrived, and starting to land and to see what is possible here in this wind-beaten landscape, we, so my partner and me, set up an artist and writer and musician in residence. We also look after one of the first rewilding lands of projects of the UK that is owned by the same family as the house. So we are on the gate actually of that wild land, and now we are working together with many people, writers and artists and musicians and people, local people and people from abroad, and all what we research together is about this this land behind us, studying different subjects, but all is coming together, and also building up towards a green, vivid archive, or a portfolio of all kind of possibilities, what we are, where we are part of, and what we can contribute to this environment, and what could be our role in this time to look after this environment.
Are you driven?
Yeah.
By, are you driven by anxiety and fear about climate change and nature, or what drives you to do this?
Oh, that's very deep inside me. It's just like almost like a call going, being outside and trying to learn from what I see, and trying to share that, to bring more, to bring maybe more awareness of the beauty and of the importance, that we look after it very well, but also that we understand it better, what all the interconnections are.
It's a personal experience as well as a creative drive, if you like. And you take photographs, you illustrate, you write, you make installations. Fabio spoke earlier about objects, the importance, or the fact that you can reduce your life to very small objects if necessary, to possessions. I know that objects and your examination of objects is very important to you artistically as well. Tell us a little bit about that. Because I've seen on your website some beautiful pictures of your installations and your photos.
Yeah, I think maybe the base of me is that I'm a collector of everything. So my work grows out of collecting and harvesting, and that can be everything. That can be natural things, but it can also be the little tops of umbrella that sometimes fall off and they have a nice shape. So I have a very strange little collections of things that just, I don't know, touch me or are interesting in a certain way. And out of these collections, a poem can grow, or a drawing can grow, and then so everything, I think, starts with collecting too much, so it's piles of material, and then I have to become calm, because in this beginning I think my curiosity is sometimes a bit in the way, because then I'm just going very wild with everything. Yeah. And then comes this different stage, which I also like a lot, that I have to see to make my way through, or to see what actually is, where is it going to, or where is it, what do I want, or what can it become. So I've never an image of the end result, or and that's, I think, the wild. I try to be not in my work, not I'm not sure if I can say that, but being less human, and trying to take, or trying to involve, or to react on sudden changes. Like really, the weather here is my boss. It decides what I am able to do on a day or not. And in the writing, I also want that influences from outside form or shape my work, and not my own thinking too much, or my own wishes, or my own. Yeah, I'm not sure if that is clear enough, but that has really changed since I moved here. That I want to be less bossy in a way.
You're more dictated. Your environment and the weather dictate how you're going to work or write or what you're going to do on each day.
Yeah, it's all I think like a question of being more there and being going back to the same places and trying to understand and to read about what I see. I was not so long ago. I have a few very favorite rock pools, and then one day I went back to one and I saw a new anemone, and I thought, wow, this is new here. But then I realized the anemone has been there for years. But it was this day that I saw it for the first time. So yeah, that made me realize that's it's just the beginning here, being here, touching on the surface of the other critters.
So interesting, because again, it is so similar to the way Fabio was describing how he's happy to be on the same mountain, in the same place. It's almost as though you don't need to go anywhere else. Maybe we can talk about that together afterwards. As far as the seaweed, your seaweed collectors anthology, this absolutely beautiful book, which has been translated from the Dutch. He wrote it in Dutch by one of our great friends and colleagues, Michelle Hutchison, who is a fantastic translator from Dutch. And you've worked on this together, I know. To tell us a little bit more about this book, because it's not just a book about how wonderful seaweed is. It's actually an incredibly well-researched book, and it's got recipes, it's got artwork, it's got a global history of seaweed, really. So, I mean, you go to all kinds of places. You go to, you talk about Matisse as well, and artistic reproductions of seaweed. So I know that you had this epiphany where you came across this enormous piece of seaweed, which was that, there's a photograph, I think, of you holding this sort of two life-size pieces of seaweed. And then you started researching, is that right? What happened after that epiphany?
Yeah, so I did not know anything about seaweed before. I just started with going every day, seeing what I could find in the surf, and starting to swim, and starting to visit libraries. Yeah, all the ways that you can get information. And send yourself to some exciting place to look at a very old herbarium in a library in Basel, or it brought me on beautiful places. But it's very interesting. I realized with the translation Michelle did. It has been translated to German as well by Bettina Bach, and that the book is as the seaweed, the book is growing as well. With all these versions now, I have now like four sisters almost from the same book, because there's also an American version now. It's slightly different, but the book is expanding, and I discover, because it has been 4 years ago that I started, so I am discovering more, and it's nice. It comes in the book as well. So this new knowledge or another drawings or something which was maybe not really true, got out. So it's fine by the talks with the translators, by this very precise reading of them. We are almost like, growing it together.
It's great. I mean, translation is a miracle, I think. And you yourself are a translator. You're a translator of one of my favorite Swiss writers, Arno Kamenisch, which is, again, I love all this, you know, all these concentric circles. And Fabio will know Arno Kamenisch as well. So you understand about translation. And I think that's what, you know, what makes us, again, very, very special indeed. And the other thing that I love about this book also is that you talk about seaweed in a very positive way as a sustainable food, as something we can, it's not just an elitist little delicacy or just something, you know, that Japanese people eat. It's something we can all eat. We could all nourish ourselves much more from seaweed, and you've got recipes and so on too. It's great. Now we're going to hear a reading, I think. Let's see how we are back in Krems. How are we doing? There we are.
First piece is a poem I wrote after a walk to one of the lochens not far from Knockvolligen to collect a specific water plant to put along our new pond. Water strawberry. Look for cinquefoil, you said when I asked you which way to go. It grows in the bed of the Linnam repite. Take this spade. And somewhat confused by your commanding tone, I set off without comment along the rubble track, at which point a curlew marking out its territory swooped down at me, seeming to contemplate a second attack as it turned, giving me the opportunity to climb over the rickety fence, after which, on the heath, I marvelled at the rushes swaying in the wind, accompanied by a loud bleating. The cottony fluff on slender stems became lambs, and stumbling across the desiccated silvery white bog moss, which crunched with each step, staring continuously at the battered noses of my wellies, no longer waterproof. Afraid to crush abandoned eggs, I heard reed warblers, skylarks and cuckoos, until the lochen appeared between the hills, unexpected nevertheless, although I knew this marshland with mignates now fringed among bountiful water lilies, which today were not quietly reflected in the pitch-black water, but flapped violently, and bending over, I searched the swampy bank, found no corolla or fruit, but the jagged foliage, fresh green with a pink line along the edges. And the second one is a fragment out of my seaweed anthology from the chapter Tidelines. The sea begins somewhere else each day. I head for the surf in a straight line. The waves of the retreating tide have whipped up the sand. My feet sink onto it. I wade through deep-kneed water and feel the cold sea seep in through the walls and knees and elbows of my wetsuit. Beyond the island of Bladderwreck, I make my first crawl strokes. In the sea, one rides without chair legs, footstool and desk. There's no slow work, no more staring out of the window or eating apples. As an underwater writer, you have to discard everything. Be submissive, strap on lead blocks, otherwise you will float back up the surface and all the newly written words will ebb away. The forest that I swim through is powerful. The algae seem to be driven by a mysterious current. They calmly wave back and forth. While snorkeling in the bay, I lose all sense of scale. I've never seen a landscape so slowly and completely in motion. Loose fronds float past, below and above me. Many are almost transparent, but none of them looks lifeless. Jagged leaf edges, torn off stems, broken away holdfast. Only out of the water does the seaweed surrender to the test of time and shrink away. To my left and right, I can see in the corner of my eye how algae each have their own substrate and territory. I try to concentrate on the different stages of development and investigate various clusters for their shape and size. I look around as I hold on, slowly flippering, one hand clutching onto a rock. The sea here is so clear that the sun projects the rippling surface onto the bottom. Everything is moving, the water, the rays of light, the seabed, the seaweed and the creatures. 2 young dabs shoot away. The red tentacles of the mottled anemones waft back and forth, and a small school of needlefish hide when my other hand creates a shadow. On the algae, I see other algae. I run my fingers over the kelp leaf with the delicate brocade of Obelia geniculata attached to it. I do not pick it, even though I can barely resist doing so. Millions of zoospores and gametes around me are already on their way to creating a new generation. All these traveling particles that carry life within them and while settle on the seabed or some other surface have a strange effect on me. Will they settle on me too? Is the water making me permeable? In all this interconnectedness, you might see an example of an ideal world in which species are tolerant and offer each other holdfast in the current in order to survive. Pure symbiosis. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. And here we are, really, well, virtually, really. I'm with Miek Zwamborn and Fabio Andina. We've just been hearing Miek talk about seaweed. And you've actually, at the back, Miek, I saw there were hanging dried seaweed. Is that's your collection, is it? In your reading?
Yeah. and they are dried. They are dried, but because they are used to humidity, they react on the weather circumstances. So on there's one that is called Porman's weather glass. So it's really like a barometer. You can see if the rain is on its way or not, and then that's hanging just down and becomes even a bit wet. And other days they are crispy and they are standing up, and well, no, they will never turn up, but yeah, they are alive.
They're alive. They're alive. Fabio, you're vegan, so you could probably eat all this seaweed, couldn't you? Do you feel tempted to eat a bit more seaweed in your life?
Yes, of course. But the problem is, we were talking about this before, the problem is that you go in a store and there are always the same 2 or 3 kinds of seaweed. And so I keep eating those, and I will have to improve to know more about seaweeds, because they are very full of nutriment, of micronutrients, no vitamins and minerals. And me as a vegan, we need to eat seaweeds. I also use spirulina, the powder, but it's very expensive. And so you use it just a little spoon once in a while. But of course, seaweeds is a big part of a vegan diet.
So, Miek, I think you could end up being a seaweed supplier to the world if you're a new business.
Well, there are actually really a lot of seaweed farms popping up, which is very necessary. So that's good. I think distributing seaweed, that's important. But I think I have also other things. Sometimes I will send Fabio a little package with seaweed from Algen.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
We've achieved one thing with this conversation, and I think there's Let's try a few more, because we have got this amazing topic, and I know that, you know, we've already established that you two inhabit your own wildernesses, really, and you write about them, and you also draw. I mean, art is very, very important to you both as well. Can we talk about art now? Fabio, I know that you paint and you draw as well, and Miek does too. How important is it, the integration of art and writing to you, Fabio?
Well, art and writing and drawing and music too. I listen to music, and I would love to play an instrument, but art is part of my life every day, because every day I write, every day I read, every day I listen to the music, not every day, but once in a while I paint. I also love, like Miek said, I also love objects, strange objects that I find in the woods, like a little stone, like a little rock, or a little wood, or something strange. And I think that I can make art popping out from everywhere during the day in my life. Even watching the colors up in the sky, to me it's art, part of the art, you know? Or seeing how the clouds change the form. This is art to me also.
When you see the clouds, and when you see rocks, do you feel the need to either draw them or paint them or write about them, or do you just experience them? And
no, yes. I'm not the kind of person who likes to take a picture as soon as I see something beautiful. I like to admire that and feel that. I don't need to take a picture to remember that. I like to live the moment. And
can I ask you as well, Miek, the same question? When you experience nature and, you know, everything you've been describing, do you feel the necessity to record it in some way, as an artist, as a photographer, as a writer?
I think maybe less and less. I feel that I have to catch it, but and sometimes it feels also too much that you take it. But I think drawing, for example, really helps me to make a connection through my eyes, through my hands and arm, into the paper, to understand how something came in existence. So this summer I was dropped on one little island because I wanted to make a map in 24 hours of that island, and I did not write a lot, I did not draw a lot. I was just looking to the formations and trying to understand how this process of making this, the early stage of this wall of this rocks, how that was once fluid and then it became stone. So I see it more as now here, being here, not separate as making art. It is just, yeah, it is like you say as well, it's there.
It is fascinating, because neither of you, it seems to me, are great adventurers or explorers. You are just people who inhabit these spaces that you're in each time. And I'm very struck again by both of you loving the mountains. And I want to return to your novel as well, Miek, where you write about wir sind uns am Ende der Welt, we'll see each other at the end of the world. And you know, Fabio as well, with Tage de Felice, La Pozza del Felice, that you're writing about mountains. And I want to talk about mountains. What is it about mountains? Why do you want to climb mountains? Why do you want to be in mountains? Why do any of us want mountains in our lives? Fabio.
Well, I have to say that I don't climb mountains, but I walk and run up in the mountains. So where my feet can take me, but I never climbed with
You don't do the.
I don't do the climbing thing. No, I just run and walk. So I go up to 3,000 meters to the mountains in Switzerland. I go up just to stay by myself and listen to the silence. That's the main thing. I always think that there is a reason why they built monastery, probably, yes, up in the mountains and not down by the sea. Just because the more you go high in the mountain, more you can be close to the sky and connect to the universe. That's the main philosophy.
Are you religious, Fabio?
No, in my sort of way, yes, probably. I feel this spirituality connecting to the nature, but I'm not Christian. I'm not Muslim. I'm closer to the Buddhist Zen philosophy of life. But I'm not following any religion. I can say that I connect to the nature in a spiritual way. Probably that's my religion.
Miek, you lived in Switzerland, you lived in the mountains for several years, and you're also the translator of a wonderful writer, Arno Kamenisch, who writes about mountains and villages and so on. What is your personal connection? What do they mean to you, mountains?
Yeah, they. I don't think I'm so interested in being high up in the mountains. I really like to be very down in the mountains. So the feet of mountains and starting a long walk and struggle up and be so close to that whole body of stone. I think that is what I'm very, yeah, that's what I really like. But and all the density and the compressed life in the village of the people who live there, I think it's very very moving as well. That they're in this immense landscape. It's a few houses and people live there together. I don't know what that is. That's very attractive to me. That's here as well. What keeps me here? That there is this unendless barren landscape, but there are people living in there. And I now think the mountains I climbed in Switzerland, I've never done them several times, so I would be now interested in getting them to know better, because in a way, if you climb mountains or walk in the Alps, they always stay strangers to you, and it's you there who is the protagonist, and now, yeah, I like to be a very small little something in that landscape. So I don't feel it's about me. It's really about becoming part of time layers and about another scale that I can understand.
Thank you. Let's see. I've got many more questions to ask you. Let's see whether we've got any questions from our viewers, listeners, from the audience. If Veronika is there, and then we'll come back and hear what Miek and Fabio will say. Veronika.
Well, first I'd like to inform you that you've got huge fans among the audience. There are people calling you the queen of literary events and very happy to listening to you. They're enjoying your conversations, and I'm very happy to report that to you. And now I would like to tell you about some questions, and please make you decide what to use and which, because we are live on television as well, and we have to make sure that we really end on time. So first, there are the questions for Fabio. One reader asks, what about readers who want to contact or see you? How about that? Somebody else wants to know if you never miss Los Angeles, a hug from your old friends. So what about staying in contact? And then I've got two questions for Miek. One is the question, since the weather is your boss on your moods, as you just said, does your inner creative life go with the weather? Is your writing influenced by what the nature around you does? And the second question is, what do you do with all the precious things you harvest in nature, besides from fixing them on the wall behind you? Do you have a big treasure chest in your house? So this is it from Austria, from Kleingrau-Minoritenkirche Krems for the moment.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, right. Well, we've got a treasure trove of questions there. So let's, Fabio, I'm going to ask you, because I'm going to put you on the spot. You've obviously made lots of friends all over the world. I'm sure you both have, because you both travel so much. But do you miss San Francisco? Do you miss LA? Do you miss your friends?
Well, no, I don't miss the big
They're listening,
cities.
they're watching, so be careful.
Yeah, if there is a friend from San Francisco, hi, hello. No, I don't miss the big cities. I lived there at the right moment in my life when I was 22 years old until I was 30. That was the good moment to be there, to leave the California way, to go to concerts, to go to the beach, to go to the parties, etc. And to take the plane and go to Seattle, go to Arizona, New Mexico, New York, Philadelphia, etc., etc. Now I will hate to go back and do the same things at this age of my life.
So
now,
that sort of brings me to another question as well too, is that okay, maybe your friends will find it more difficult to contact you, but what about readers? And I mean, how can people reach you as you live such a remote life?
Yeah, well, in Google, Fabio Andina, and then they will find my website, fabioandina.com, and there is my email address. I receive many letters from readers, and I answer. I like to answer and to make a contact, to make a relationship. Sometimes we write back and forth. Me from up in the mountains to this reader south in Italy or north of Germany. That's very nice. That's a part of my job that I really like.
That's reassuring to hear, because I think that's probably another question I'll follow up with, if I may, is that you both live in quite remote areas, but it doesn't mean you don't like us, your readers, other human beings.
No.
It's a different form of contact. So, you know, you're still writing for readers. You're not just writing for yourselves.
Of course, yes. And then,
Miek, I'll ask you this question, if I may, about this is again, it's so interesting. This quote, you know, the weather is your boss, but how does that influence your creative life, your inner life?
Yeah, so the weather sometimes causes that I have to do chopping the wood the whole day because it's possible, and then my writing time becomes really shortened. But I think then that's now a good pressure between me and the boss, that that sometimes I can escape. And sometimes, and a lot of my writing actually happens or underway when I'm going to these rock pools, or when I'm working in the garden. Yeah, so I don't know if I can see myself the influence of the weather. Sometimes I also try to use it as a clock. So when it stops rains, I stop writing and I go back out. So maybe somebody else probably can, if somebody else would study it, they see maybe something. But
There might
for
be
me,
a
it's
pattern that you don't see. Yes.
yeah.
So the second question is, is your house very full of all the things you collect? Which is basically, although the question was asked by the audience in a very poetic way, which is, do you have a treasure chest of everything you collect?
Well, they're in the windowsills and in my room, and then on all other places there are little compositions with I'll just quickly bring something like I store them in, like, these are kind of worms.
For a moment I thought they were cigarette ends, but they're not.
No, they're beautiful pink.
Oh,
but they don't look so beautiful then on the screen, but they really are. But I changed them, so it's not fixed here. It will not stay there for long. And now also these rock pools are also kind of the same thing, like little collections. But I of course won't take them in my home. And
so
my whole pedal collection.
You're less minimalist than Fabio, I think.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. My whole pebble collection, which was quite big, now end up in the stairs I made in the garden because I don't want to expose them anymore. They are now, so I can still enjoy them, but they are now also functional.
You're creating a museum, and I think that's something that you probably have always done in your life, is collect. I'm just checking with Veronika that if there are any more questions. Otherwise, I've got quite a long list still to ask. Any more questions from the audience?
No, not for the moment. Thank you, Rosie. Thanks for asking.
So much. Thank you. Now we've talked about your personal relationships with your home, with where you live. What about other people who come to these places? Do you feel that other people coming to Mull, coming to your village and so on, Fabio, that they are threats to you? What do you see as the main threats to your own personal environment, to your own wilderness? Fabio.
I'm not really sure if I understood the question, but
do you feel that people, are the threats big threats like climate change? Obviously the mountains are changing. We know what's happening to the glaciers.
Yes.
We know what's happening to the climate. Or is it people coming, tourists coming? I mean, we're all tourists, but what are the main threats to your own personal wilderness?
Okay, yes, I understand. Well, that will be too many people coming just for exploit. But it doesn't happen where I live. Where I live, there are not so many tourists. It's not a touristic landscape. But if I think about touristic area up in the mountains, just because there are ski resorts, that's a big threat to me. I understand that people want to ski, to enjoy, but that's a big impact in the environment, pollution, because all the cars that they used to go to the ski resort, and then they throw trash all over. I know that because when I walk up during spring and during summer and during fall, where there is a ski resort, there is trash all over because people they eat a sandwich and then they throw the little plastic bags, and they have to cut trees to make a ski resort, so all the animals have to migrate, or they cannot find where to live, where to hide, where to escape from for example, little animals cannot escape from the eagles because there are no more trees, because they cut all the trees. That to me is a big threat.
Does that upset you? does it make you want to change something?
Yes, or also when they discuss to make a bigger street so they can bring more cars up in a valley, or when they decide to make two, there is one little street, so they decide to make two streets so there are no more traffic jam in certain part of the valley, because they want to bring more people up in the valley. That's a threat, because it's more people, more pollution, more in landscape damages, and that's a big threat. And they call this modernity, or but they don't understand that they just exploit what is being given us to which is nature. Well, we receive that as a gift, and most of the time we don't understand that, and we exploit and destroy this gift.
Miek, can I ask you the same question then as well about the bigger questions, if you like, of what's happening to the environment and to the wilderness? And the Isle of Mull itself is a very popular place for us in the United Kingdom to visit. It's quite remote, but we can go there and get this experience, if you like, capital E, of being in a remote area from going to visit you.
Yeah, I think I'm quite afraid of this, of hasty people going for the big experience or going quick somewhere. They jump out of the car and they run to the beach, and then they go back in the car to another beach, and I just don't understand the whole thing. And yeah, I think it's such a pity, without being ending too negative. It's just such a chance you could have visiting a beautiful place and then spending time and being there and trying to really land and take time to enjoy it in a different way. I think that is I think we can start learning that again as people. But
do you feel that do you feel both of you that you own where you live? Do you feel resentful of other people? Because in a way, what you're saying to me is it's fascinating, but I could also say politically, what gives you the right to own that part of the wilderness? So Miek, if I could ask you that, do you feel you have a right?
Well, I'm looking after, like, for example, every week I do a beach clean, and therefore people who come to the beach think this is a beautiful, remote, clean beach, but they don't know that a few days before it was a colored beach with all kinds of plastic. Yeah, I feel also responsible for maybe sending out that message or helping people. For example, but if I would do a guided walk and I would show people and talk together about other experiences and other places that are dear to them or something, then it would, I think you could be less hasty and more aware of the importance also of what we have. It's all already disappearing so much of it. It's a bit. Yeah,
Fabio, if I ask you as well, I mean, what right do you have to live to that part of the world that you live in? What right do you have to say, I don't want other people there?
Well, we are just a little part, little tiny guest in this big landscape, and I believe that we have little or none right to be there, because most of the times we do damage to nature. In a few years, I won't be there anymore, and rivers and rocks will always be there forever. They deserve to be preserved. They deserve to be there forever. I don't. I'm just a little tiny thing that doesn't matter whether I'm there or not. So I think I have no right to be there, and I will have always to ask, can I? So lots of respect to the mountain. Can I go up in the mountain? Can I come to you? In a way, it's a philosophical way to think about that. I have to knock on the door, and hopefully the mountain will say, okay, today you can come. Sometimes the mountain doesn't want you to go up and visit because the weather is bad, because the weather changes quickly, and you have to respect that. And you are just a little tiny dust, and doesn't. I repeat myself. It doesn't matter whether I'm there or not.
There are a couple of things I'd like to quickly ask you both before we finish. We've got another 5 minutes, and I wanted to ask you both about language. This is a really important aspect of what you're both involved with. You're both translators. You're both multilingual as well. Miek, I know that one really interesting aspect of this is that you translated a book from a writer, Arno Kamenisch, who writes in German and in Rätoromanisch. So I'm asking you as a translator and as a writer, what is your relationship to languages and to the village languages too? In many ways, some of these languages are dying out as well, or are only spoken in Switzerland by a few people. Switzerland is so rich in its dialects and languages, and it always makes me wonder about the beauty of how we protect them.
That's a very complicated question in a way. All these languages that are dying out. The only way you can keep them is by translating and learning young kids to use them at school. I don't know really how to answer it. It's quite a complex question.
It is. And
because also I'm a foreigner in this landscape, so I was a Dutchman in a Swiss landscape, now a Dutchman in a Scottish landscape. The Gaelic is disappearing here. Who am I to jump in or to get a whole picture of what is all going on or what is all disappearing?
And you're learning words or picking up words wherever you go, which are very rooted in a place, in a small place. I mean, Fabio, there are words that describe mountains and weather and so on too, in Italian, in German, and in the village dialects that we will never know unless you put them into your books as well.
Yes, I write as a I don't pretend to be Dante Alighieri. So when I write as a street people, or my dialogues are taken from a bar, and I want to keep dialect parts of my dialogues, and I don't pretend to preserve the dialects because dialects are disappearing, but I believe that if I write about a mountain person, I need to use these words. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, just to give a flavor. Like you are cooking something, you need some spices. So my spices are dialects, words.
It's wonderful. And very finally, very quickly from both of you, we are very aware, because we're not all physically together in wonderful Krems in the Wachau. We're not drinking the beautiful wine. I know that you wouldn't, Fabio, but I would drink yours for you.
Thank you.
I can tell you it's amazing wine. I miss it very much indeed this year. But what has this period, this pandemic period, meant to you? Has it been a good time for you? Are you writing a lot? How have you experienced it? Very quickly, because we've only got a very short time. Fabio, for you.
Me first. I can say that nothing changed to me as a writer. Nothing changed. The only thing is that when I go to the city, I have to be careful. I have to put the mask and all these things. I'm worried about all people I know. But to me, as a person, as a writer, nothing changed. Like it didn't, like it doesn't exist.
Miek Zwamborn, what about you? How has this pandemic period treated you?
In the writing, maybe that I realized that I would like to write more about my daily life, which is so full of little wonders and encounters. And the other thing is that I feel that I have much more connection or contact with people everywhere. So in a way, it makes it also much more. Yeah, I feel much more together with a lot of people very nearby that are far away, just because there's internet and you discuss other subjects in these times. So it has quite deepened.
It's been
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's been a miracle, as you spoke about what you want to write about, the small miracles of life. This is one of the miracles of this period, I think, this pandemic period, bringing us all together in this way. I want to thank you very much indeed. It's been wonderful, and thank you for letting us into your wildernesses, into your homes as well too. And so, Miek Zwamborn, thank you very much indeed, and Fabio Andina as well. And see you together.
Thank you.
In real life, I hope very much.
I hope so. I hope so. Hopefully. Let's cross fingers.
Cross fingers. Take care. And back to Veronika. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you to all of you. It was such a great pleasure to have you with us. What a pity that we can't have lunch together now, but maybe this will work another time. We are back to Klammraum Minoritenkirche Krems now, which is home and the original location of Literaturtage. And I'd like to say thank you to all of you. This is the ending of today's second panel of the European Literature Days 2020. I hope you enjoyed listening and would like very much to welcome you again to Rosie's next third panel starting this afternoon at 2:30. I don't know if we've got the time to get Rosie back into it and tell us two sentences about what we are going to expect. Rosie, could you please summarize a bit, give us an idea?
Yes. The next panel is called Who Defines Wilderness? And this is an absolutely fascinating and very important discussion, because it taps into all our thinking at the moment about colonialism and racism and conquerors, explorers. And we'll be talking to the most wonderful Bettina Gappa, who is from Zimbabwe originally, and Gergely Petafi, who's from Hungary. So again, another massive and brilliant discussion, I'm sure, ahead of us.
So thank you very much, Rosie, for the moment. I'm very much looking forward to meet many of you again at 2:30 this early afternoon. Goodbye.